All right, welcome to the 8-Figure Product CEO podcast. And today we got an interesting one with Corey Harlock, and this was going to be about talent. Okay, how to hire the right talent at your companies, how to make sure that talent drives results, and we're going to get into it with Corey. Before we get going, and this is a must for all CEOs who want to build their companies. By the way, he works with teams that are like 5 to 25 million. So if you're in that range, you're building your team out. I talk a lot about that, where once you get to like 15 people at the company, things start falling apart. You need leadership. And I'm sure Corey's seeing these exact same things. So this will be a fun one. And by the way, for the non-business owners or the solopreneurs or consultants, we'll get into, how Corey finds clients and what works on the marketing side and all those types of fun questions. So we'll pack it with a lot of good questions. Before we get going, though, a little bit about me. Head over to Apex CEO to find out what I do, which is help CEOs become more successful and make more profit. And I have a free exit readiness test that you can take a survey. So basically, you can do it in 5 minutes, see how close your company is to exiting or what areas you need to work on. It's free over at the website, apexceo.co. All right. So Corey, please give yourself an introduction.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I founded Key Hire Solutions back in 2016. Really saw a need for help in the small business world. Everyone's always after the big companies because they can afford the big ticket. And I wanted to find a talent solution for small business owners because the reality is they need it the most. They hit that exact kind of crux you talked about where the experience outgrows their talents and they start grinding and struggling and they can't figure it. They don't always have the answers or know why. And they get stuck in that kind of, when time and effort is your only input, right? If we want to grow, we just have to work harder and longer. And that's where we really are designed to pop in and come in as their director of talent and help them, design the organization, develop the new roles, look at who's in the organization, if we need to shuffle it around, and put together a talent strategy plan for them so they can scale and grow responsibly and at a nice rate with the least amount of pain.
Yeah. So you come in as the director of talent. Now it's a very unique offering. You're sort of, let's see, the way I would call this is it's a done for you hiring solution. Okay. So it is the way I see it, so instead of me, because I've hired executive recruiters and they're 33%, and you hiring someone who's 300,000, you're paying $100,000 for that one hire. And I'm getting a book that I may never end up reading of, when this person was born, when they, when they took their first step and all these things. Right. Yeah. And that was back in the day when life was more complicated. But what you're doing is you're kind of at that earlier growth stage. So the question I want to start with here is, how do CEOs even find out about your offering? Not necessarily from the consulting. I mean, we'll get back to the do's and don'ts on the consulting side, but like it's a unique offering. So, and a lot of times they just want to hire, they just want to fill the seat for the least amount of money. So how do you sort of get involved there and show them that your offering's got that real value?
So the reality is we are probably 95% referral. From clients. So I have clients, they go to their tab or their Vistage and someone says, "Oh, I'm really struggling with the leader in my business." And they're like, "You got to talk to Key Hire." And essentially that's how it is. A lot of my clients, they'll say, "If you ever have anyone who's not sure if they should hire, just have them call me and I'll tell them to hire you." Because we get to know our clients really well. And for the most part, we work with them really long-term, right? We do more than one engagement with them. We'll stay with them for a long time. But that's, as a small business owner myself, that's one of the things we're currently working on, is putting together kind of a different way to engage with clients, because scaling and growing, if I take my own advice, referral's not the way to do it, right? So but we essentially get most of our clients who are just doing a good job.
Yeah, well, it is a good way though, in a sense, because for what you're doing or what I'm doing, if people come in cold, I mean, it's really difficult. They got to get to know you and be comfortable. On a referral, they come in warm. Okay, and then I know people are going to want to know so how it works, and so let me just jump right into the price.
We were just talking about this, because
Well, let me just kick it off first. Is I am a big proponent of using a recruiter, and the reason I say that is because the companies you're working, they can't afford to have HR. Okay, so typically, right? So who has to do the hiring? If for a leader, it's probably the CEO founder, and half the time the CEO founders are super busy or they're sort of scattered. Like doing an organized hiring.
I think Luke might have just hit his leave the meeting button. Hopefully, he'll be popping in here soon. But he was asking about the process and kind of the offering and cold versus warm. And he's right. A lot of owners, they will start a business and not because they love to hire. Sorry, Luke, I'm just jumping in because I had a feeling where you're going, right?
I got bounced somehow. Go for it.
Yeah, that's all right. So, I mean, just a lot of owners think about this when they start their business. They don't start it because they love to do accounting. They don't start it because they love to hire people. They don't start it because they love to do employee handbooks, right? They do it because they have a passion. And I say this all the time. I've tried to play a lot of golf in my life, and I've gone to the driving range, and I've probably hit 100,000 golf balls. Doesn't mean I'm ready to be a golf pro. It means I've hit 100,000 golf balls wrong. And so when you're in the small business world, two biggest complaints of a small business owner: no time, no money.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two things we try to solve for, is try to have a nice, fair and equitable solution for both sides. But also we want to value their time and save their time. And all I do is talent. And
Yep.
our stats say, we have a 90% success rate, which is higher than any agency or whatever you want. And that's because we control the process, because we fit in between DIY and agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the Key Hire was designed to fill that niche for small business, because agency doesn't work for small business. They don't. Biggest complaint here is I don't think they understood my business. The second thing you hear is I paid a ton of money for someone who's meh, they do okay, right? And so that's exactly what we try to solve for. So we want to take that off your plate, right? We do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Our businesses invest anywhere from 6 to 12 man hours per hire. But part of our diligence is because, like you said, we're done for you, but we're in-sourced. Man, we're throwing around buzzwords like crazy here. But we spend a lot of time with our clients at their business before we ever go to market doing anything. Because as we say, we want to know your business almost as well as you do, because that enables us to tell your story in the market. We're not ABC recruiting company representing our client. I'm going in as representing Apex CEO, right?
Yeah. And the way I always thought about it was, okay, let's say you're talking about somebody let's say it's 150,000 hire. It's if I had a recruiting firm, if I'm paying 20%, I'm probably just getting resumes. They're doing some calls and I'm getting resumes.
Yeah.
If I pay 30%, they do the full workup. I mean, I find out. Yeah. And so, but they're not really onboarding the person. But I mean, they do a lot of nice things, but they're not onboarding the person. And you're doing it. And sorry, I got bounced out and I had to come back in. But I don't know if you mentioned your fees, but you're doing it. You didn't get there yet. So let's see. From it was like 4 to 6K a month in a one person hire in 3 months. So that's going to come to like, around 15 grand for
it's 18K for the 3-month agreement. It's
18K. Okay. 18K. And that's going to bring in like a manager level, like,
so we cut off it. So the economics don't work if we're below 80 grand, right? So if you want a $60,000 supervisor, we're probably not for you. But if you're looking for managers, and just to go back, what you're saying about agency is, what did I say? The two things hiring or owners don't have: time or money. So a $30,000 fee. Yep. You're going to the bank in February to get a loan, and they're like, "Well, you lost money last month." You're like, "Yeah, well, I had to pay an agency fee."
Yeah.
Right. So we just show up as a fixed cost. But the other side of that is they say, "Here's your slate of candidates. Which ones do you want to interview?" That's not valuing your time, and it's putting the responsibility to make the hire on the owner, who probably isn't really good at hiring. So that's where we come in, and we just do all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We help you, we coach you along the way. We sit in on the interviews to make sure we're asking the right questions or asking the right follow-ups and making sure the right informations get put on the table.
And then, so you get, so you first you do the recruiting part. Now, are you using LinkedIn or any of these types of
Sure.
sites? Okay, and then who's paying for that? Is the client or you? Because there's some marketing.
Yeah, so we pay for all of those costs. We
Oh, you
cover
pay
all
for
those
all of that.
costs,
Okay,
and
okay.
and our promise to our clients is we will never post your job.
Yeah. So
So
you
everything
do.
we do is targeted.
Right. So you're doing all that. Then you're helping, kind of the interview process. You're probably giving them, now, are you giving them advice on like how to do questioning or how to set up a test? Why don't you share what are like 3 things that most people don't do that you guys have found out are really valuable during the interview process to kind of separate the best folks?
Okay, so the secret sauce to all of this is,
Yep.
um, and just to give it a little background, in our market from here for perpetuity is there are more jobs than people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So your attitude has to change. And
Oh,
so
okay. Scarcity.
scary 100%. So the old why should we hire you question,
Yep.
the candidate should be asking the company, why should I work for you, right? Because
Right.
they're interviewing with at least one other company if they're interviewing with you.
Right.
So I tell my clients,
This is really important concept for CEOs because a lot of people in that group, they're looking to save $10,000, $20,000. They're not thinking this way. You
yeah.
have to think the way that Corey's talking here.
So what I tell my owners or my hiring managers, if we're really interested in someone, I guarantee you someone else is too. So whoever's first with the best offer wins. That's the market we're in, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
so how do we get there? The biggest mistake small businesses make, and businesses in general, is candidate experience is king. So if I really want to work for Google, but there's a small startup IT shop, and I interview with both of them, and I've dreamed of working for Google my whole life, and they put me through a crappy interview process where I feel like a number, and this little IT company knocks my socks off, takes me for lunch, and shows me all the things I can do for them. The statistics say, even though I've dreamed of working for Google, I'll go work for the small shop. Based on
Okay.
it's that powerful. It's like an 80% swing. So putting together an exhaustive and efficient hiring process is key. And those two can live together, right? And every job, every role you're hiring for, that process is different. So if I'm hiring a CEO, that process is different than a guy to run my CNC machine, right? Both can be exhaustive and efficient. So that's number one. Candidate experience, making sure when someone's coming in for an interview for a key role, you're ready for it and you're excited for it. And if they're coming on site, if they're on site for 2 hours, the first hour is an interview, the second hour is a sales meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Second thing is have a process. And in that process, as we always say, you should have the same people asking the same questions in the same order. So what I mean by that is a lot of people will say, well, they'll interview 2 different candidates, and Luke, you might interview one of them and I might interview the other. Then we get together to debrief. What are we talking about? I don't know what you asked them, and you don't know what I asked my candidate. So how can you possibly compare them? So you include only your best people in the interview process, and only people you value their opinion. So if you have someone in the interview process, ask yourself this question. If they object to the candidate and I really like them, will I hire them anyway? And if the answer is yes, don't include them. Here's why. Because if they say, I don't think you should hire them, and then you did, what does your great employee now have going on in their head? I think you're only going to damage the relationship, right? If they like them and you're going to hire them anyway, there's no win. If they don't like them and you hire them anyway, there's damage done to the relationship. So get them out of there. And then you have the same people involved in, if you have a position, the same people are involved in that position every time. And they all ask the same questions, and you run it in the same order. So then when you get to debrief, you have a baseline and you're comparing each of the candidates to a baseline. So I can say, I asked candidate A and B the same questions, and here's what I liked and didn't like about each of them.
Okay, so number one is make sure your experience, especially smaller companies, you're right. You're competing against bigger firms, and you're trying to get those people, okay? Because it's a talent war. So,
100%.
actually, Actually, number one, it's a talent war, scarcity. Number
Yeah.
two, make sure your experience is special, like add something special to whatever your experience is. And then number three is have a process, same people asking the same questions in the same order. So thanks for sharing. I mean, that's super valuable. Now, what if you get to those final two people? How are you separating them? What is the easiest? I know it's never easy. Okay. I always tell
Right.
people, the hiring, maybe you can turn it from a 50-50 to an 80% success rate. You're 90%, right? So you
Yep.
can improve. It's never going to be 100%, but
No.
I do have a couple strategies, but I'd love to hear, what's worked for you. You've done a lot more of it
Sure.
in how you separate those two stars in that final interview.
So I'm gonna blow up your whole question here. If you get down to the wire and you think you're gonna have two people to compare each other against, you're crazy, because people are going off the market in 2 to 3 weeks, and the chance of you generating two great people you're conflicted about at the same time is very slim.
Yeah.
So here's another secret: know it when you see it. Right?
Okay.
So the second biggest mistake business owners make when they hire is they don't clearly identify the role they're hiring for. Clearly identify the role, have a scorecard, and have a threshold. Our threshold is 80%. So as soon as someone going through the process hits 80% or better match to the role, we go. And we go fast and we go thoroughly. And our clients know, because we've kind of talked them through the process, that we're not going to have compare and contrast. We have a scorecard, and when someone hits a score on the scorecard, we know it when we see it. If they check the boxes for us, and that's not experience, right? We measure in 3 categories, Luke. We measure in culture, we measure in experience, and we measure in capacity. So if they're an 80% on their scorecard or better in all 3 of those categories, we run them like we're hiring them. So you don't need to, if you can understand what you're hiring and be clear on it, you don't need to compare and contrast. You need to have an accurate description of what you need, a really good, accurate description. You need to have a great scorecard, and you need to run them through the process so you can say, I am 99% confident this is the right person for the role, because we clearly defined the role. We ran them through a great process, and their score is over 80%.
Okay. Well, and this is all amazing, by the way. Okay. Because hiring is a big part of, even what I'm talking about all the time, but I still want to go deeper into this one. Okay.
Hit me.
I'm going to hit you. Okay. Cause you know how we are, where people are emotional about things.
Yes.
So you're hiring a salesperson. You're measuring for culture, experience, capacity.
Yeah.
For me, experiences, I love it when people have already done the job I'm hiring for. If I
Sure.
have to hire someone and they haven't done it and they're kind of stepping up into that job, that's a bit of a risk. If they've already ran a sales team, obviously, that helps check the box. But how do you know what is a way that that person has experience in your world? They have experience, because the thing is, you could look at a lot of salespeople. Okay, these people ran teams. They're very friendly and they fit our culture, and they hit some big sales numbers over here, so they got the capacity. Like, how are you actually saying this sales star is better than the other one?
It's a great question, and you picked the hardest role to hire for, right?
That's a tough
Sales
one.
is the lowest success rate of any company, right?
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, for that exact reason, because salesmen are good salespeople are good at sales, and they'll convince you they're good, right? So because we work with small businesses, what they'll often a company will often do is say, "Oh, it's a sales manager from like our biggest competitor is coming over." But what we always try to take into consideration is, okay, are you running a team? Great. How big is that team? Are you just like looking at reports and managing KPIs, or are you picking up the phone and doing it? Because we're a small shop, we need a working manager. So we always look for particular progressions. So someone who started in a small business and then progressed into a big business. And our selling feature of a small business is, hey, you're going to have impact and influence. And I'm giving away my secret sauce here, but some of the messaging we'll send them is like, hey, I know it's hard working for a big company. You probably have a ton of ideas with all the experience you have. And they're probably saying, yeah, those are great ideas, but like not changing the whole company because you had a great idea today, right? But if you come work for us, we're going to listen to your ideas. You're going to have influence. We want you to bring your experience and ideas to us to make us better. So that's always the draw. But if they're from a purely corporate background with all that structure and like the silos and the verticals, they might not understand the chaos and the volume and expectation of work of a small business. So you always want to make sure they have a startup or they worked in small businesses for some time, so they have a reference point to come back to.
Yeah, this is a key point that Corey's, because I've lived this, and some of these people are great. Okay, they're have
amazing
the
at what they do.
Yeah, they're amazing. But the thing at a small business is you have to turn the eggs into an omelet. Okay, that's a terrible analogy, but you got it. In a big business, they have people that do that for them, or they don't have to be super innovative, but they got to run a process that was given to them by somebody else. And then that process, moves whatever they're doing along, and then it goes off to someone else. But at a small business, for lack of a better word, you got to make things happen. And there's always a gap on that. So I think that exact example you brought up is a perfect one. So
Yeah.
But I would say, Corey, it is nice to have people who've worked at the big companies, but they have that flexibility. Okay. So because they'll bring that structure to your company, which is beautiful, right? You may not have that at the CEO. So
that's the capacity you're looking for, right? They're going to bring capacity to your business.
Yeah, exactly. Because when they do that, they make your company better. You're no longer the smartest one in the room because they've got all these great ideas, but they've got to be flexible, just like you were.
And they have some muscle memory in there about what it's like to work for the small guys. I'll give you a really quick and dirty example of what it looks like. So let's say you own Luke's hardware stores. You have 2 locations. Each hardware store does $1 million each. Okay. And you're the manager. You're the regional manager of Luke's hardware store because you see 2 stores. Home Depot across the street, 1 store is advertising for a general manager. If you apply for that job, are you going to get it?
Okay.
The answer is no. What can Luke's hardware store bring to Home Depot?
Right.
Nothing. They're going to have to retrain you. They have processes. They're going to have to break your entrepreneurial spirit and corporatize you and train you on their process. In fact, it's going to cost them more to hire you than someone who's never worked in a hardware store before.
That's why I can never get a job again.
Correct. Right. But now I'm the assistant manager at Home Depot, and Luke's Hardware is looking for a regional manager. Are you going to hire me?
Yeah, exactly.
Heck
you
yeah.
Bring that talent.
I can bring you all kinds of process, procedure, good stuff, right? So that's what we're looking for. That person that has an entrepreneurial spirit, worked through that entrepreneurial spirit, ended up in corporate, and is now like ready to go back and give back to the small business world with all this experience and cool stuff they've learned, and they're ready to be impactful and in a business, drive a business.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And those are great examples. So let's talk about this. There's a couple books that I read that talk about it, and I experienced in my own business. I mean, everything goes to bleep when companies hit a certain point, 15, 20 people. It's like the CEO manages everybody, and then there's a certain point where it's like, it's a disaster. So how should a company that say 20 million, and this depends on the type of company, but how could a company that say 20 million structure their leadership different than say, $5-7 million company?
Yeah. So, and this is the right way to start a business if you're not VC backed, right? You got an idea, you got some cash, you hire your neighbor, you hire your neighbor's cousin, you hire your friend, and everyone goes in and does whatever they have to do to drive the business forward.
Yep.
And if they do a good job, here's the worst thing. The business will outgrow the experience and capabilities of the people who grew it. And that's the exact point you're talking about. That's when it gets hard. When everyone is doing what they think they should be doing to help the business, but there's no alignment, there's no specialization, there's no key experience, there's no process, there's no procedure, and there's no one who understands how to build that. And that's what Key Hire was built. That's where we were built to come in, right? We have these things called the key owner stages, and they start at overwhelmed. They go for overwhelmed, unsure, curious, and growing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we kind of take our owners through those stages, but the overwhelmed and unsure is really where we like to play, because those are the owners that are like, um, I know it's not working, but I don't know why, because everything was great 3 months ago. We were killing it. These guys were killing it. And these are my friends and my family, and they helped me, right? And then they get to a point where it's like the people that got you here might not be the people that can get you there. And
Yeah.
that's where you need to start bringing in what I would call a professional, right? So the person that's running sales, or the people that are assuming the sales leadership role, probably don't have the experience and the capacity of a professional sales leader who could come in and almost immediately say, okay, here's a couple things we can do to run better, right? Same with your
Mm-hmm.
production. The person who designed the facility and was, your mechanic, your buddy who's your mechanic and your production manager and was working a machine when they had to. Amazing. But are they the people to help design the bigger facility and put the safety protocols in place and do the lean management and all that? Because I've had business owners where I've said, we need to get a production manager and we need to make sure they have lean management. And I swear to goodness, this is what they said. Does that mean they work out? Right? They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Amazing business manager. One of my favorite clients ever. But we call it, you have to redefine what a good leader looks like. And because you'll say, oh, but they're a great leader, they've done a great job, and they're not wrong. But when you bring in a professional, they go, oh, that's what a professional looks like. And they redefine what their leaders need to look like in their business. And that's that crux I think you're talking about, that 7 million, 10 million. And then once you start adding professional leadership in your business, you're kind of in a position to scale to that next level.
Yeah. And they don't know what they don't know. And that's why it's important for CEOs to be in some sort of social groups. It does help. Like when you're in maybe a Vistage or
I'm a Vistage guy myself.
Are you
like
yeah. You got to have that network around you. YPO, whatever it is, you got to have that network so you can sort of compare and see what the other successful businesses are doing. Okay, let's I know this is a big maybe not elephant in the room, but a big thing out there. So a lot of these companies, they want that team, but they don't want to pay for the team. Now, before I hear your answer, the thing is, when I work with people, you know why, Corey? Because they're not making enough money. So these companies are, say, a $10 million company, and they should be making 15, 18% EBITDA, and they're making 5% EBITDA. Like they're literally not making, literally cannot afford it. And that's, to me, a business problem that's got to be solved. It's like, wait a minute, you should be making, if you're on life support at that point. So I'll get that out of the way, but I'd be curious, what you hear as far as getting over that mental hump that, wait, I got to pay that much for a sales leader. Like talk to me about that one.
Yeah. And that's probably our biggest hurdle coming in. And I don't know about you, but oftentimes when we get there, there's a skeleton in the closet where, we hired this big ticket person before and it was a disaster. It was a waste of money. They didn't do anything. And we go back to the hiring process, right? They didn't clearly define the role. They didn't have a good hiring process. They weren't asking the right questions. The right people weren't involved. It was a friend referred someone who just got laid off. And we thought, oh man, what a steal if we could get them in our business. Hey, we'll hire you. Here's what I need you to work on. It's an immediate problem. 4 weeks later, they've wrapped up that challenge and no one knows what to do with them because their skill set really doesn't fit the business. So that's kind of something we need to overcome. And that's why we say, we have the process, and good people have ROI.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And so when, we talk about, let's use a really easy one, like a purchaser, a professional purchasing manager, right? It's an easy conversation to say, like a purchasing manager, let's use some rough numbers, 120 to 140K. Holy, I'm paying my current person 60 grand. Yeah. And you're probably paying 50% more on all of your raw material than you should. Yeah. So a good rule of thumb for a purchasing manager at that level, it's like, okay, we're going to pay them 120. In their first year, let's let them know they have to save you $240,000. They should be able to save you twice what you're paying for them, right? Because they should be a revenue center, not a cost center, especially in the first year. Every year it's going to get harder and harder to save, right? The fruit gets higher and higher, and those wins aren't as big. But even with the sales manager, well, it's going to take a minute. They're not going to give you results next week, but we're going to put some process. We're going to put some KPIs. We're going to put together the right incentive structure. So when we start bringing in salespeople, we'll know where they fit in order of experience and what in their targets. We'll be able to measure them, and we'll be able to incentivize them competitively based on their performance. So I think the key is to explain the ROI of the role and say, yeah, it's going to hurt, but if we get it right, we're going to be sitting here in 6 months and you're going to tell me it was the best hire you ever made. Now, on the other side, if they just don't have the money, I think that's where fractional help comes in. You're like, okay, maybe hiring, and we have to be, like I always say, my job is not to spend as much of the company's money as I can. In fact, my job is to try to give them the best cost benefit possible, right? I want to be a revenue center for the company. I want the people we bring in to help them make more money. And sometimes after you do the analysis and look at it, the right thing to do is say, yeah, it's not the right time to hire a big ticket player like that. I know a really amazing fractional sales. Let's have a call with that. Or I know some companies that can help you with your buying programs. Like, why don't we bring them in and talk to them?
And along those lines, another thing I've experienced personally is like, well, first of all, as the CEO, it's good to have 100% accountability. That was one of our cultural points. Okay. So if you're the leader, you're in charge. You can't blame poor performance on your team. You're the leader, right? So as the CEO, if the hire didn't work out, now, legitimately, there could have been some issue with that person, but that would be on me. Okay, I probably didn't onboard this person properly, or I didn't choose the right person. But then after you choose them, you got to onboard them. You got to make sure the goals are there, that they understand what success means, and then you got to train them and get them into your organization. So, what do you guys do sort of on the onboarding side, and then especially for sales? It's always like, gosh, how should I set up the commission, the bonus, and the structure to this, and then how do you guys kind of fit into that?
Right. So we don't do much once they're hired, except follow up. A lot of our clients will want us to do like a 3-month follow up with them and make sure everything's going okay. But we can have input into, when we're making an offer, what's the incentive program for a salesperson? Well, we don't really have one. Okay, well we need to have one if we want to be competitive. So let's start thinking about that. Maybe I can help you. I have some people that can definitely help you. It's kind of bringing in resources at that point. Yep. I mean, sometimes incentive programs for sales, depending on the product you're selling, don't have to be super complex, right? People just say, look, I'll give you 2% of every sale you make. And if you go over target, it goes to 2.5%. Pretty simple stuff.
Keep it simple, for sure. Yeah. Keep it simple. Yeah.
So, we just want to make sure we're positioning the company to put together a good, strong offer. And then they kind of, we'll follow up because we deal with our companies a lot. We spend a bit of time on site. So we'll see the people, we follow up with them, check in with them and do stuff like that. But in terms of like onboarding and getting them signed up for benefits and all that stuff, that's on the company.
Yeah, that's on to them. Okay, why don't we wrap it up? Do you have like an example, some exciting example that maybe you can share? A hire that maybe changed up a company, or something that would be fun for the listeners to hear.
Yeah, so I'll go back to my my client who didn't know what lean management was, and in that exact example. So we put in a director of operations. He's got a massive warehouse distribution company, like massive, and he had a friend of a friend running his warehouse facility and making deliveries and like trying to do everything. And that's where I said, like, with this size of this operation, you got lift trucks running in here. We need a professional director of operations. Like, you need someone who can lean this place out, who can put safety protocols in place, who can organize your inventory, barcode bins, like get you set up. Stage gear, like run your trucks, because he had a fleet. And we found a guy, and what he wanted for salary was far more than he had ever paid anyone. And I remember him looking at me saying, "This better be worth it. Better be worth it."
Yep.
And this director of ops went in and kicked ass. He rearranged the whole warehouse. They used to do deliveries, shipping and receiving in the same area. He moved it. He got him to invest in racking systems. They have everything barcoded, everything sorted. They got staging area, safety protocols, the whole deal. And 2 years later, not even 18 months later, we were looking for a controller. And he said to me, he said, "This controller, they got to be as good as Terry." And I
Yeah,
said, "What do you mean?"
that's a great compliment.
"Oh, no," he said. I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Best hire I ever made." I'm like, "I know. He's awesome. Like, he's
Yeah.
great." So
Yeah, they actually know what their inventory is now. So
yeah,
there's
and this guy, this director of ops, he's just the best. Like, he's a great guy, and they have a great relationship. They have mutual respect, and he's really helped educate the owner in terms of how to run and organize like a facility of that size, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I had to go through the same thing because we got up to 200,000 square feet, and you got to have people that know these things. And there's a lot of safety, and also just a lot of money, with freight moving everywhere, and efficiencies and lost inventory, and there's just so many pieces to the puzzle. So
Yep.
that's a great example. Why don't we wrap up this conversation just for the solopreneurs and consultants listening? Now, we did talk about how you find clients, so a lot of it's referral,
Yeah.
but tell us about things you've tried, maybe things that haven't worked. Have you tried email? Have you tried LinkedIn, your website? Just, whatever you can share just on the business side for consultants.
Luke, I have tried a lot. And what I've learned is small business owners, if they're not at their business, they're at home, and they don't spend time on social media unless they need to be on there.
Yep.
They're not clicking links. They're not doing anything. So you got to find them where they are when they're in need, And so it's a challenge. It still, to me, is a mystery. We're trying some different things, and we're having some better luck with some of the stuff we're doing. But I'm trying, the next step we'll do in full transparency is, I want to do kind of an assessment they can run their leadership through to make sure like they still have enough capacity for the business, like where the business is. See, kind of, they can assess each of their leaders, like a quick and dirty thing. They're going to pay for that with an email, right? And then we will use that email to kind of send them some more information and help them along the way. And then hopefully they'll say, "Wow, this is really good information. Maybe we should be working with KeyHire." But small business owners are the least visible group online I've ever encountered.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think when I was running my company, I wasn't really caring about LinkedIn that much, but until I wanted to hire somebody, right?
Then you're on, but you're not like going through your feed. You're like finding people.
That's right. That's right. So let me just go. I'll just go through the checklist here. Cause by the way, I'm less than a year into this business too. Okay. So I'm learning what works, right? So, cold email. Have you tried that one?
People hate it.
People, oh yeah. Well, I thought they love it. Yeah. People hate cold email. How about building a newsletter? Have you tried that?
We have a newsletter, and we measure our open rates, and it has generated zero business. And we have 10,000 leads on that newsletter. So either we're doing it horribly wrong, or people just like, maybe I don't know if it's zero, but it's not like every time the newsletter goes out, we get a bunch of calls.
Yeah. And then how about direct outreach on LinkedIn? Have you done any of that?
Horrible. Yeah. People, the connect and spam deal, people are so gun shy of that if they don't know you. I've tried it, and it's not an effective use of time.
You know what I think is, just look, because your business proposition is very unique.
Yes.
Right. So I think it takes a minute for business owners because they haven't heard of it before. Now, that's also really good because you're not competing with other people who do what you do. You're like probably one of the few guys who I'm sure other people do something similar, but it's like you're not competing against a sea of other people who do, hiring done for you. So that's always the challenge. You're offering super unique, and so you got to educate people.
Correct.
At the same time, you're not competing against, a bunch of other people doing the same thing.
100% correct. Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Like, we don't have any competition, but the challenge is explaining what we do, because people are really like, oh, so you're a recruiter? No,
Yeah.
we do all this stuff. No. What if I just want you to find me people? Then I'm not your
Yeah.
person, right? Like you can go to agency for that, but we have a success rate because we run our process, and it's a proven process. So if we can't do it, we can't work with you. Like you have to let go and trust us, right? To do the right thing for you.
Yeah. Well, listen, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for hopping on, Corey. And I'm sure we'll be working together in the future, because I have,
Yeah, man, I'd love to keep in
clients.
touch.
Yeah, definitely. I have clients that can use the service. And so where can people find you, learn more about you, connect with you?
Sure. Our website is keyhire, KEYHIRE.solutions. No com,
Easy.
just solutions. Or if you if you put Corey Harlock into LinkedIn, I think I'm probably the only one that'll pop up, or I'll be one of a few. So just look for my ugly mug and hit connect. I'll connect with you.
Awesome. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. Again, everybody, you can look him up at Corey Harlock, HARLOCK. And Corey, this has been awesome. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.